I went through 4 years of hell by the scum that we had to deal with. I went through 4 years of hell. I spent millions of dollars in legal fees, and I won. But I did it the hard way. It's really hard to say that they shouldn't have to go through it also.
Our lineage and our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry of thousands of years of warriors, of women who raised up families, raised up city, raised up industry, raised up civilization, who pulled us out of the caves and the darkness into the light.
This is precisely what I've been describing, the ultimate dispossession of whites. It will come culturally, politically, artistically, musically, demographically. You are describing the very thing that you would probably never permit or never countenance if we were discussing some non-white country. Imagine whites or any other non-Mexican group were pouring into Mexico, more likely to commit crimes, more likely to go on welfare, demanding ballot papers in English. Hold on, let me finish.
I would never argue that Mexico is the same as America. The countries were founded in very different ways. They were created in very different ways with different ideals.
In other words, what you're saying is because America and all white countries are inhabited by white people, dispossession is good for us, but it doesn't work for anybody else.
No, sir,
That's what you're arguing.
I don't see it as dispossession. I see it as an expansion of equality. I see it as an expansion of civil rights and equality on the very ideas on which the country was founded. Because America, as you are talking about it, is a stagnant identity. It is a place in time. But America, in the way that it's always existed, is an ideal. No. It's progress. It's practice.
The very first citizenship law passed in 1790 by the very first Congress reserved naturalization to free white persons of good character. They wanted a white country. They wanted a white country. They continued to want a white country until 1965. What you're saying is completely revisionist. The idea that America was founded on, it's up for grabs. Come on. That's complete nonsense.
I've never said it was up for grabs.
Well, that's implied in what you're saying.
The idea of America in terms of working towards an ideal of equality in which all men are created equal, in which all communities have access to the same resources, the chance for life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that is the ideal. I know very well our founding fathers were slave owners.
Yes,
and I know very well that they probably did not imagine that America would be today what it is.
They would have been appalled by the idea. Furthermore, what you're saying is somehow whites were about to choke to death on their own homogeneity when people like yourself kindly arrived with diversity and saved us from ourselves. No, we built a wonderful country that your ancestors could not have been. That is why people like you come here. And the more you come in larger numbers, you will change the country my ancestors built into something else. And it is completely normal for me to wish to oppose that.
Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller. Stephen, great to see you. You know the interesting thing about hearing from a guy like Gene Simmons right there and what he had to say? When you do talk to someone who is either the child or the direct legal immigrant to the United States, they often share that type of love of America. Wherein, when we look at an illegal population, you don't often hear that same type of patriotism.
Well, first of all, thank you for having this conversation, Will. I think there's been an incredible lack of honest, truthful, candid conversation in American media for a very long time about immigration policy. And you're right, of course, that immigrants who come here illegally engage in an act of spite against America from the moment they cross that border, and they continue to break our laws and flout our system and defy our rules every single day they're here, and continue to plunder and pillage off the system. And of course, their children, as a result of so-called birthright citizenship, which is the greatest scam in history, get unlimited welfare for life that goes to the benefit of legal alien parents. But I want to address your monologue specifically about the 1965 Immigration Act and what that means in American history. So during the civil rights era, and this is the simplest way I can put it, there was a thought in effect You can go back and you can read the transcripts of the debate at the time of applying civil rights to immigration policy for the globe and to create a civil right for people from every part of the world to come to America in ever-growing numbers. And so a system that for years, as you mentioned, had been tightly restricted, suddenly established this global ability of people in every part of the world to come to America, to bring their families to America, and then eventually empty out their entire towns and their entire villages to the United States of America. And so what you saw between 1965 and today was the single largest experiment on a society, on a civilization that had ever been conducted in human history. Not just the 76 million immigrants that were brought in, largely from the third world, but their descendants too. So you see with a lot of these immigrant groups, not only is the first generation unsuccessful, again, Somalia is a clear example here, not only is the first generation unsuccessful, but you see persistent issues in every subsequent generation. So you see consistent high rates of welfare use, consistent high rates of criminal activity, consistent failures to assimilate. But this shouldn't be a surprise, Will. It's just common sense. If Somalians cannot make Somalia successful, why would we think that the track record would be any different in the United States? Go third world country by third world country. But you look at the society. If Libya keeps failing, if the Central African Republic keeps failing, if Somalia keeps failing, right? If these societies all over the world continue to fail, you have to ask yourself, if you bring those societies into our country and then give them unlimited free welfare, what do we think is going to happen? You're going to replicate the conditions that they left over and over and over again. And we mask the impact of immigration in every public policy issue we discuss. We talk about test scores. Well, if you subtract immigration out of test scores, all of a sudden our test scores skyrocket. If you subtract immigration out of healthcare, all of a sudden we don't have nearly the size of the healthcare challenges our country faces. If you subtract immigration out of public safety, all of a sudden we don't have violent crime in so many of our cities. Issue after issue, we talk about these things as they just happen to us. The schools just suddenly fail. Violent crime just suddenly explodes. The deficit just suddenly skyrockets. These are a result of social policy choices that we made through immigration. Even worse than that, you end up with what our founding fathers feared the most, which is that you have foreign immigrants who become advocates, not for this country, but the country that they left. So you see, replete throughout Somali politics in Minnesota is this constant concern about how to reorient U.S. politics around Somalia, and then using welfare fraud, pillaging the U.S. financial system to prop up a foreign country. So in this case, the U.S. becomes an object not of patriotism, but of plunder.
So one last question, Stephen. I think you and I could have and should have this conversation at a much longer scale. This is something that is incredibly important and worthy of a half hour together. But such is the nature of television as it is right now. I'm working on that. But this will be quickly my last question for you. What can we do, Stephen? You know, this was something America addressed in the 1920s. They had these debates. They had these conversations openly. And they chose in the 1920s to say we are going to put strict quotas on people coming from different parts of the world. 65 did away with what we did in the 20s. So do we need something like the 1924 Act?
Clearly, we need to have in this country exactly what President Trump called for, which is that we need a moratorium on immigration from third world countries until we can heal ourselves as a nation, solve our education issues, solve our healthcare issues, our public safety issues, our assimilation issues, our cultural issues. So the 1924 Act is such a good example because we had large-scale immigration from Europe from 1880 to 1920. So in other words, we went from a country that had immigration from part of Europe to immigration from many other parts of Europe. But even other European countries pose enormous stresses on the U.S. system, both economically and in terms of security. There's a lot of crime, a lot of threats to public safety and order, and those were addressed with very strict new immigration quotas. What they don't teach you in school is that from 1920 to 1970, there was negative migration. There was a half century of negative migration. The foreign-born population declined by 40% for half a century. During that same time period, Will, the U.S. population doubled from natural childbirth. That was the cauldron in which a unified shared national identity was formed. They went through a depression together. They went through world wars together. They landed on the moon together. This great period in American history happened at a time when there was negative migration. They don't teach that to our kids in school. And frankly, I would submit very few politicians serving in Congress probably know that, Will.
Oh, man. Let's work on that half-hour conversation on television, not just on podcast and digital. Thank you so much, Stephen Miller.
That was the Koch kind of corporate class, the Chamber of Commerce guys, with the open borders people. But what they did is they wanted to kill inflation by flooding the zone with low-skilled workers. I mean, the Federal Reserve was very open about this. They said they were going to do this. This is how and they did it, that 10 to 12 million. Well, Bernie Sanders, you can't defend American workers. You can't defend American citizens of every ethnicity and race until you're prepared to go hardcore in immigration. You can't have the world come here to your own country that your family's been here for generations, busting their ass to make this country better and to make the communities better, and have the world come in here and compete with you, not just with with the low skilled jobs, but also with the phoniness of the H-1B visas, and that we don't really have any legal immigration in this country. It's all a scam.
So
it's
the
all
H-1B
a scam.
visa, and I wanted to talk to you about
it's
that.
the depressed wages. The whole thing's
Yeah.
the depressed wages,
And
and they're winning.
You were
and this
saying-
is why Bernie. This
Yeah.
is why Bernie. I say Bernie Sanders. The reason people say was Bernie's a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
What gives you hope? What do you, Jared Taylor, find hope in, and why?
I find hope in the increasing number of white people who are waking up just to the absurd double standards of which we are victims. Every other group can be explicit about pushing its own interests, preferring the company of people like themselves. You can have a Korean church. You can't have a white church. You have the Black Firefighters Association. You can't have a white Firefighters Association. People are getting fed up with this. And I think more and more people are getting beyond the fact that this is a double standard, that ultimately it is going to push white people into an intolerable corner. And unless we're prepared to stand and say, no, hold on, this is for us. This is for us. And we deserve to have this. We have the right to be us. Only we can be us. Sorry. I think more and more people are reaching that point. I'm very happy about the kind of progress I see, not only in the people coming to American Renaissance and similar groups, despite the blackout that the social media has imposed on us. At the same time, you have things such as the legislatures in a number of states now trying to ban DEI in state universities. This is a new thing, a brand new thing. I mean, DEI is a new thing, and it used to be that when people were opposed to critical race theory and DEI, they would say, this is divisive. More and more people are prepared to say, this is anti-white. And so I think there is a real awakening of the horrible things this country is doing, not only to itself, but to white people in particular. I think it's a very, very exciting time to be alive. I wish I were 30 years younger so I could keep doing this for another 30 years, because I feel that the ideas that I've been pushing now for the past 30 years are finally coming into